Hi, and welcome to Camino Talks by Follow the Camino. Today, I've got the pleasure of welcoming Sharon Dickinson and Jeff Gray from California.
Hi, Alberto. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jeff and Sharon. How are you doing?
We're doing fine. We're back in California.
So today we're going to talk about long distance walking. And Sharon, Jeff, I've invited you because you've been traveling long distance walking for a while now, with us at least for 8 or 9 years, something like this.
No,
longer than that.
The first walk was in 2010 for 3 months.
2010.
In fact, that's where we met you. We met you in France in 2010 when you flew down to meet us. Remember, there was a small problem and you came down to fix it.
yeah. Well, it's back a long time, and
yes.
And so we do have a lot of inquiries and some long distance, and these are quite specific, and new guys who have done various routes. I wanted to know a bit more about that. But maybe firstly, if you want to introduce yourself briefly, that would be great.
Okay, well, as you said, my name is Jeff Gray, and
mine is Sharon Dixon.
Right, and we've been together since graduate school in 1972, and that was our first long distance trip. We bicycled across Europe for 6 months, living in a pup tent because we had no money. And we've been traveling like that, initially on bicycles and later by foot when we got tired of bicycles. So for a long time, yes, we've done a lot of it.
That's amazing. So you've traveled on these type of long journeys almost everywhere in the world.
50 years now.
On and off, yeah.
Yes, a few years I actually had to work to pay for the damn trip.
Oh, we both did. Yes.
We both had to work, yes.
Brilliant. I suppose to both of you, how do you go about choosing a destination when you go on this journey, and maybe more specifically on the Camino, but in general, and then more to the Camino, if you don't mind?
I can tell you the Camino one easily. So in about 2008, I think it was 2008, we had bicycled across Germany for 3 months. And someplace in Germany, we stopped in a bookstore, and Sharon saw a book called Jakobsweg. And so I picked it up, and my German was good enough to be able to figure it out. And we said, that's an interesting idea. Maybe we should do that 1 year. And a couple of years later, Sharon decided, let's try that. And she wanted to walk that from Le Puy-en-Velay to Santiago. And then, so in 2010, that's what we did. So that's how we found it in a German book, Jakobsweg.
That's brilliant. And so by now, can you tell us, so which route have you done on the Camino then?
On the Camino, we've done the one from Le Puy-en-Velay to Santiago. We've done some of the northern one, a little bit around Bilbao area. We've done the one on the Portuguese coast, up that one. We've done the latest one was from Sevilla, heading north up there. Do we do any others?
Well, we did a second run from Roncesvalles.
Oh, that's right, we did a second.
To Astorga.
Yeah.
And tell us about your experience of the different routes. Are there any that you have preferred, and if so, for what specific reason?
Well, I preferred the main route from Roncesvalles to, or even Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago. I think there was more to see. There were more people on it, more places to eat.
Yeah.
And decent places to stay.
Yeah, and decent places to stay.
And second, you'd say what, Portugal?
Yeah, Portuguese route is probably the second
Very good
route. It's particularly beautiful. It's not difficult. And we went, I think, past the tourist season, so it wasn't super crowded. but the weather was perfect and the ocean was beautiful, and it was just, you know, it was a stunning route.
Have you walked that one?
So I have cycled the Portuguese way and I've walked the last bit, but I would have cycled it. Yes.
Yeah, the Portuguese part is better than the Spanish part for that particular trip.
Yeah.
The Spanish part is not as interesting, but the Portuguese part is really nice there. I think that was, yeah, I agree. That's my second favorite.
And lately, so that was the end of last year. You tried to walk on the Via de la Plata, the one from Seville, and so that was a lot quieter, I suppose. When Sharon, you're saying that you prefer the French way with a more buzzing, better accommodation, better services. The Via de la Plata is very different, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't work out well. This was not a good one for us.
It's if you want to be completely on your own and you know, just walk and meditate, then that's the one for you. But there is literally nothing there.
Extremadura is empty. I mean, really empty, but it's not, the distances are long, and we knew that from what you had told us before we went. We had good advice about that. So,
Right.
so you were very good about telling, you and the other people in the Camino were very good about telling us what that trip was like. Viewers, you can get a feeling. Many of the places were 20 euros a night for the two of us with dinner. That gives you a sense of the accommodations. And there just weren't better choices. I know you picked the best choices available.
Also, it's very, very hot, and we thought we were being smart by going in October, but even then it's boiling. There's no shade, and the scenery there is quite repetitious. There's miles and miles and miles of cork trees and fields.
Good pigs, though. Very good.
Very extremely nice pigs, and if you can get the ham, it's delicious.
Now, one thing.
So if that's the kind of trip you like, then by all means. It's not as interesting either until you get to some of the major cities as the Camino Frances.
The cities are fabulous, though.
Yeah.
Vida,
Cáceres,
just fabulous.
Zafra.
Yeah, the cities themselves are really wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about the two of you traveling. You've been traveling together for 50 years. When you go on one of these trips where you know you're going to be walking together for 30 days, 50 days, have you got your own habits whereby either there are some days where you know you're going to walk together all along, or some days you're like, look, it's a day where we work a bit separately, or how do you get to organize yourself on the day?
We've always walked together. Occasionally, one of us will be a few feet ahead, but not much typically. We learned from bicycling over many years never to make a turn without being invisible, to be visible to the person when you make a turn. So we don't get separated by silly errors anymore, which we did in the early days of the bicycle.
Well, the first Camino trip, technology wasn't as good, and I walked it by myself and Jeff biked it, so we were separated on that trip. But on the others, we stayed together, partly for safety reasons, partly because we don't mind each other's company. We don't talk a lot, but
And so, as a side note for your viewers who might understand this, I've had 4 hip replacements. So, and I can still walk, obviously, total hip replacements. So in 2010, I couldn't walk. I hadn't had all the hip replacements done. And that's why I went by bicycle, and Sharon walked it. So I biked it. But yeah, we always walk, we always stay together when we can. Couldn't on the bike.
Yeah.
Great. And tell us, for example, on the French way, or some routes that are a bit more popular, did you get to meet together, or the pair of you is so strong that you stick along and so on? The way on the French way it's so busy, and Sharon was mentioning that earlier, where you probably started to know some people as you went along. So
Yes, we would talk to people as we went along. We would, of course, see them at the bar, as you know. And in each town, everybody who's walking that day seems to get together in the same bar for some reason, or maybe
yeah,
there's two bars.
Yeah.
sure.
And so typically the bar close to the cathedral, and everybody shares the stories of what piece of mud they walked into or whatever else blister they got, or whatever excitement they saw, the burros walking along, some great stories. So so we were part of that the same
Yeah.
way.
And how would you define the challenge of working for so many days in a row? I mean, it must be tiring physically, but also mentally. I mean, moving on almost every day, except for rest days here and there.
Well, we take rest days.
Yeah.
So one thing we do that's different than your Camino, we always ask you to book 1 or 2 extra days at each rest stop. So we will typically walk for 6 days and then rest, not for 1 day, but for 2 days, or sometimes 3 or 4 days, because those are interesting cities. Almost all the places you've picked as rest stops are interesting cities, and they're worth the time to look around. And you're on foot, so you can get around to see it. You don't have to be a nuisance of a car to find a damn place to park or something. So that helps.
And obviously age makes a difference. We might, if we had done this in our 20s, we might have done it completely differently.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
we're a lot better at it now.
There is, you know, the way you have reached Santiago several times, if not many times. Do you find it always as rewarding as you reach Santiago town and then when you get to the historical center, or was there a trip or a route in particular that has had a different effect on you?
The first one, you go ahead, the first
Well,
one.
the first one was particularly rewarding because it was such a long trip, and it was the first time. So yeah, reaching Santiago was like a really huge moment. But the last time was nice because they had cleaned up the facade of the cathedral, and you know, it looked really beautiful.
Yes, we recommend for those who can afford it, stay at the Parador in
Yeah.
Santiago de Compostela. It's expensive. Stay there a few days. It's a fabulous city. We've gone back, what, 3 or 4 times now
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, it is a nice city.
If you can afford it, if you can save up your nickels, we strongly recommend it.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Could you share with us a couple of high moments?
On the first trip, we met up, or we kept coming into contact with a gentleman who was traveling with 2 burros. And one particularly good moment that happened, I was walking with a woman from Australia, and we were in France at the time. There was a large puddle of water because it had rained or something, and there was a particularly ridiculous style we had to cross. It was a ladder, and you had to sort of throw your pack over the other side, then climb up and climb down. But the guy with the burros was standing on one side of the puddle, and we called to him, and apparently they refused to cross the water. And he was stuck there he eventually made it, but he was stuck there for quite a while before he could convince them to go across.
In fact, I saw him later in the day at the Central Cafe. He was still talking about that puddle, that he had to walk a half a kilometer north of the puddle to get the damn burros to cross. But he had quite a story, because just think of the trouble of traveling with 2 burros, finding a place to stay that will keep your burros.
Yeah.
Now, the refugios are not designed for burros.
No, it's the logistic is a bit more complex indeed. That's right. Burros, for those who don't know, are donkeys, which a few people will attempt to travel with. Great. And would there be any tougher moment? I know that Sharon, your last trip, you got injured at some stage, and that made the trip difficult.
Well, I think any walking or hiking trip, you're going to run into minor injuries. If you run into major ones, that's a different problem. I mean, some of the classic ones is on the last trip, my foot started to hurt for no reason. And by the time I got home, it wasn't hurting anymore, also for no reason. But I also fell and sort of, bruised up my wrist, which didn't help things.
So one thing to note for you people who are going to do this, if you can, and the distance is too large, or the terrain is too hard, or you're just broken because your knee hurts your foot, or you got a blister, take a taxi. Don't be stupid about it if you can afford it. In some towns, you can take a bus. The Spanish bus system actually works. It shows up plus or minus 15 minutes of the time.
Yeah.
The minus 15 is the confusing part when it shows up early and leaves.
Yeah.
They don't quite run the kind of schedule that Americans are used to.
Yeah.
But yes, injuries are common, and just figure out to work around them, and don't be silly. Find a way to solve it.
And on the main route, you can tell that foot injuries are common because every pharmacy you go to, there's a rack of foot aids of various kinds, Band-Aids and wraps and blister pads, usually prominently displayed just inside the door.
Yeah, and I think also another thing which is important is for people to practice even at home, to go out to walk 2-3 days in a row as much as possible, because however the experience, the weather, your body or whatever might react differently at different times, so it's important for people, I suppose, to just to be prepared. Would you have, I don't know, one or two tips or anything else that you would like to share with people who might think on doing like you some great journeys, some very long distance trips?
Take walking poles. I've noticed that many pilgrims use them now. There are a lot of people, I think, who think that you are being a wimp if you take walking poles, but considering the distance, the different terrains, the uphills, the downhills, I think no matter how old or young you are, it's really good to have a lightweight pair of poles with you.
The second thing I would say is take half as much crap with you as you think you're going to need. One of the things you'll notice on the walks is how many people discard stuff as they go along.
Yeah, or ship stuff home.
We're still, I mean, we're pretty experienced, and we still end up shipping stuff home because this is a problem. If you go for 2 or 3 months, you're going through several climate changes, and it's very hard to plan clothing for knowing what the weather's going to be for a long period of time. So be prepared. The Spanish post office is outstanding. I won't say that for a lot of other countries, but in Spain, the post office is good.
Yeah.
People are friendly, helpful. They're good everywhere. So you get a box and you send the stuff home. I mean, so if you're carrying winter stuff and it becomes summer, or the reverse.
Jeff and Sharon, thanks very much for your help. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers?
I think that this kind of long distance walking becomes a good habit. And what happens is, once you've done a few of them, you start to look for other trips. I mean, we've done trips in addition to this one, quite obviously, in many different countries, in many different modes, and they're all different, and they're all related in the fact that you've learned how to walk by yourself. I think the key is, because we did this in school, when we finished school and went for 6 months, we learned how to do this. And that took away all the fear of languages, of culture, of travel, and knew we could figure things out. And so if people who are listening to this, trust me, you can figure it out. It's a challenge. It's not easy to travel, but it's interesting.
But I think the other point is, particularly if you live in Europe, it's perfectly reasonable to do it in sections. It's, you can, it's more accessible if you're in Western Europe already. So you can go for 2 weeks, see how it goes, go back to school or whatever. Next year or next vacation, do another couple sections. And that's another way to do it.
And we met several people.
Yeah, we met a lot of people who did that because they could only go on their vacations. And that's a good thing to do too.
It is something that I like to see ourselves doing is whenever we engage with people, whenever they are inquiring about a week holiday or a month holiday, to say that we break the fear in the sense that at first they've never gone to 5-6 days working holiday, so it's their first time. And we like to see them growing, whereby they come back to other trips.
That's a good idea too.
And everybody learn, as you said, and will discover other routes and will gain confidence. And they don't have to do greater and greater journey in distance, but they can just see wherever their comfort zone is. Thanks very much for sharing this moment with us. And I hope that our viewers will have enjoyed that. Please do not hesitate to put comments or likes. It's always good and we can respond to these. And thanks again, Sharon and Jeff. And good luck for the next trip.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.